Hi, it's Paul from Wicked Acorn. I'm on a reconnaissance mission. I'm working on a video about Greater Manchester's involvement in the Dam Busters. Now, 3 of the lads on the mission were born in what we now call Greater Manchester. And perhaps there are more that lived here, but I haven't really delved into that part of the story yet. But a friend of the channel and fellow YouTuber, Richard Ainsworth, gave me some tickets to the Commonwealth War Graves Commission's tour of Manchester Southern Cemetery. And they're focusing on the RAF graves. And I thought it might tie into our story. So thanks for that, Rick. But I better get going. The tour starts at 11. It's 1914, and Britain is desperately seeking able-bodied men to fight. The grim reality emerges that the average age of a combatant by war's end would be 18. The youngest authenticated British soldier in World War I, a mere 12-year-old Sidney Lewis, who fought in the Battle of the Somme, a haunting symbol of the youth caught up in the horrors of war. At 45, Fabian Ware finds he is too old to join the army. Instead, he leads a mobile unit in the British Red Cross, embarking on a mission that revolutionizes how fallen soldiers are honored. Before the 19th century, soldiers killed in combat were laid to rest in communal graves. Only a selected few leaders or famous heroes were bestowed with the honor of an individually marked war grave. This lack of recognition compels Ware to take action, aiming to honor each fallen soldier. As casualties mount, Ware's commission registers over 31,000 graves by October 1915 and 50,000 by May 1916, underscoring the magnitude of the task. The Army Department of Graves Registration and Inquiries is created with Ware at its head. Reports of their efforts reach grieving families, leading to numerous inquiries for photographs and information about cemetery locations. Supported by the Red Cross, the Commission begins sending these photographs, providing closure to the bereaved. The tangible memories conveyed through these photographs offer solace to grieving families who hold on to them dearly, knowing their fallen heroes are remembered with dignity. This extraordinary mission, spearheaded by Ware and his dedicated team, preserves the memory of those who made the ultimate sacrifice. This was the beginning of the Imperial War Graves Commission, now the Commonwealth War Graves Commission.
So, as you can see here, we have the Cross of Sacrifice. The Cross of Sacrifice will be theoretically in any cemetery in the UK that actually has over 40 burials. Now, in this cemetery, Manchester Southern Cemetery, there are over 1,200. Okay, so we actually have 2. So this is the first one, so this is our First World War plot here. Okay, so a little bit about Manchester. So in the First World War, there was a lot of military hospitals in Manchester, and one of the closest was at the back road here, Nell Lane, and there was actually a military hospital there. So we do have a lot of people in this cemetery, especially from the First World War, that died of wounds from one of the military hospitals in Manchester. Okay. There was a chain of military hospitals set up in the First World War called Western General in Manchester, and they were all military hospitals around the Greater Manchester area as well. But today we are focusing on some of the RAF casualties that we have in the cemetery. So if you want to follow me, we will walk over towards the Second World War plot. Because obviously the RAF was Second World War, but we'll talk a bit more about that as we go over. The RAF wasn't actually formed until the end of the First World War, so 1918. So the majority of our casualties will be down as either Royal Flying Corps in the First World War or Naval Aviation. Okay, so after the First World War, then that's when it's really started to get formed, the RAF, and that's why all of the casualties that we'll be looking at today are from the Second World War. Okay, so this is what we call a private memorial. So if it ever does become illegible, his name, or if something happens to this, then he will get a commemoration by us. He joined the Royal Flying Corps in 1916 and received a Royal Aero Club Aviator Certificate for flying a Maurice Fairman biplane at a military school. On the 26th of September 1917, he was awarded the Military Cross, and it was actually gazetted in 1918 as well, talking about him. His final posting was to number 2 School of Navigation and Bomb Dropping, and he unfortunately died from pneumonia on the 27th of February 1919 at the Officers Military Hospital at Tidworth as well. So unfortunately we do find this a lot after with Spanish flu. It generally, if it's Spanish flu, will be down on the death certificate as pneumonia. So, you know, we had these people that actually, you know, what they actually went through in the First World War was extraordinarily, and they survived all of that, and then was taken by Spanish flu in 1919. So unfortunately that's a very familiar story in this cemetery. As we're getting towards this area here now, you will tend to find that these are Second World War casualties, and the majority of them are RAF as well in this area. So on that, I just wanted to speak a little bit about the RAF in Manchester at the time. So we had Ringway, which is obviously near Manchester Airport now. So we had Ringway. We had the Avro factory at Woodford. We had the Royal Naval Air Station as well at Stretton. Barton Aerodrome and Tatton Park was a military airfield and training as well. And then we've got the Heaton Park as well. So Heaton Park was kind of like a dispatch, like a holding place for the RAF. So when they'd done like the first lot of training and then they were getting sent on to where they were going to be, that was then they would be put at Heaton Park. But they did do different things there as well. Like for example, Bowley, you had the fighter control unit, which is just next to Heaton Park. I don't know whether anyone knows the areas, but this is why as well we do have quite a lot of RAF casualties in this cemetery as well. And as we go over, we do have a lot of cremations, and I don't know whether people know this, but even in the Second World War, there wasn't that many cemeteries that had a crematoria. So we do get a lot of people that requested that they wanted to, the family members that said that they wanted to be cremated. Like I'll talk about a South Asian casualty when we go over there. And that was one of the reasons as well, because it was quite difficult to actually find somewhere that had those facilities as well. So you will find that people would have been brought here for that reason. This year, the 80th commemorations for the Lancaster bomber as well, which was developed by Avro, and some of them were in the Avro factory. Now Avro, if anyone knows anything about RAF planes, they developed the Manchester bomber, which was notoriously a bit dodgy, but then when it did get developed, that's when the Lancaster was born, and as we know, you know, absolutely fantastic. Someone was talking about the dam busters before. It was, you know, an integral part of that mission as well, and you know, we did have that factory here in the northwest as well, so yeah, pretty important. They did all different things as well, you know, like to try and cover up the airfields, and especially the factories. So where they put like on the top of the roofs of the factories, they'd make it kind of look like it was a field as well. So if German pilots were flying over, they didn't know what they were actually looking at a factory, but it looked like from aerial that they were looking at just another field. So this is our Second World War plot. All of the casualties that are on the two front panels are actually buried here. So they did originally have the the wooden markers, which is what we would put on there before we actually put the headstones on. We decided to take up the markers and put the names on the screen wall in keeping with the First World War plot. The rest of the casualties that are on the other panels here, they are cremations. Okay. So if you actually do, someone was asking me this question before, if you actually do want to find one of the casualties that's a cremation, it's down on our database as Southern Crematorium, not Southern Cemetery. We have another cross of sacrifice, as you can notice here. So this actually, you can see this one's a lot smaller, and we have 4 different sizes. So it depends on which size, depends on the location in the cemetery. It sometimes goes off how many you've got in the cemetery, but a lot of the time it will depend on what land room is given and in keeping with where it's actually going to be as well. I don't know whether I mentioned before, the cross of sacrifice was designed by Sir Reginald Blomfield, and you have got the sword going down. So this is to reflect the faith of the majority that are commemorated in the cemetery. In some cemeteries, usually with over 1,000, we do have the Stone of Remembrance as well. We don't actually, even though we've got over 1,000 in this cemetery, we don't actually have a Stone of Remembrance. Again, we've looked through the archives to see why, but we've not come up with anything. Probably because we do have the 2 separate plots, and we have got the screen walls as well. So the words that are written on the Stone of Remembrance are actually written on the screen walls as well. And the words were chosen by Rudyard Kipling. Okay. And I don't know, people, you might know that he did lose a son in the First World War.
Thank you.
Margaret Beatrice. And we have panel 10 is where...
Oh no, that's ATS.
ATS. And we have Edna Dodds is on panel 10. We've got 10 women in total in Manchester of our commemorations. 3 of them are AF auxiliary. Yeah. But this is our standard headstone, okay? So our principles from when we started was that everyone will be commemorated equally, and this was the design that was chosen. Now it's a bit controversial at the start because a lot of people wanted, like the Americans have, like the crosses, or but we decided, you know, we're representing people from all different ethnicities and faiths, and we didn't want to have it like that. We wanted to have it so that their religious emblem, if they wanted one, could be put on the headstone, and it would all be uniform as well. So this is what we decided on, okay? And this is, you can always read one of our casualties by looking at the headstone, okay? So the cap badge will be at the top. Sometimes, if it's one of those cap badges that's like a funny shape, that's a bit elongated, some of the regiments have, they will sometimes, if they have a cross, if they were a Christian, they'll have them on the broad cross. So if anyone's seen them, they'll have the cap badge in the middle. It was started by the New Zealanders, because their cap badges kind of fit in with that style, but some of our regiments actually adopted that, and it was more to do with what kind of suited the cross a bit more as well. So you will always have the service number, the name, so you'll be able to tell that, the rank that we had at the time when they died, where they, what regiment they were in, and the date that they died. Now this here, we've got the age, he was 20. They won't always have the age, and especially from the First World War, we'll have a lot that don't have the age on there. We'll only put the age on there if we know 100% that that is what their age was, and we have the evidence to show that. And unfortunately from the First World War, a lot of people did lie about their ages, and we don't have the evidence. So if we haven't got the evidence, we won't say. It's not that we're trying to hide the age or anything like that. You know, if we know, for example, they were 14 and we've got the proof of that, we will put that age on there. It's just only if we 100% know that. Then they will have the chance to have a religious emblem. You don't have to have a religious emblem. If they're not religious, then that will just be left blank. And then the family could choose, or the next of kin could choose to have an inscription put in at the bottom as well. Yeah, so some will have inscriptions, some won't on there. So I do know a little bit more about this man here. So Sergeant Robert James Borland. So he was a navigator on a Wellington bomber. He was unfortunately the aircraft. He lost his life on the aircraft on the Wellington, and 3 others lost their lives that day on the aircraft. So there was actually a crew of 5 on a Wellington bomber. So there was actually only the pilot that survived, and 4 of them lost their lives. So it was Squadron 26 Operational Training Unit, and it was a Wellington X, and it was during a bombing practice over Hogshaw Range in Buckinghamshire. Yeah. So, any questions? We are going to have to finish up now.
Question about the family inscription at the bottom.
Yes.
Now, I'm stronger on World War One than I'm on World War Two.
Okay.
And what I understand from World War One is that the thinking is these guys are going to be buried away from home, therefore the family can have an input in what's written. But they recognise that, and it would be so many pence, 6 pence per letter, whatever. They recognise that a lot of families wouldn't be able to afford that. So there was a general understanding of choose what you want. We're not actually going to ask you for the money. We'll invite you to pay, but we're not going to chase it up.
I think it was about 12.5 pence.
Right.
And you're exactly right. Yeah.
Right.
So
That was World War One. Was it the same in World War Two?
Yeah, it was the same.
Right.
So there was kind of an understanding that we weren't ever going to kind of hound people for the money. We'd say this is how much it is per character. But it wasn't like we were like debt collectors trying to get the money or anything like that. But unfortunately in the First World War, especially before people knew this, I don't know if anything like me, if I couldn't afford something, I wouldn't have it. If I knew I couldn't afford it, I wouldn't think, oh, I'll get it and then just not pay. And there would have been a lot of people like that, wouldn't there, unfortunately, that probably wouldn't have had it for that reason. Yeah. So some other members of the Commonwealth countries actually had different decisions about that for that reason. So New Zealand, that no one had it, because they said if everyone couldn't have it the same, no one had it. Australia and Canada, that was paid for them.
Yeah, they have to pay. I think it says 3 pence a letter, but they didn't.
Yeah, I see. That's the way. Now, am I going to be taking too much here now?
No, it's going to go a lot deeper yet, so we're okay for a minute. Try and get past that where it's stopped at the moment, onto the fresh bit. That's it.
Liz, thanks for showing us around.
No, you're welcome.
So, don't know what we're going to do with this video. I hope the audio is listenable, not too much wind, but had a great time here today. It was very informative, and this is all part of the video that I'm wanting to do on the dam busters, and more specifically the Lancaster and how it was built here in Greater Manchester. And you'll see that story soon, I hope. It's quite the rabbit hole I've gone down researching the Lancaster being built here in Greater Manchester. So we will see you in the next one.